The meeting to order, meeting number 6 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration. As the bells are ringing, I would like to ask the members if we have the unanimous consent to start the meeting. What I am proposing is that we can have ministers' opening remarks and then suspend for a few minutes so that everyone can vote through the app and then resume the meeting back. Are we good with this plan? Is everyone okay? Okay, okay, so we are good?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have the unanimous consent to proceed. We will have the opening remarks from the minister, and then we will suspend the meeting for a few minutes. So members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. If interpretation is lost, please inform me immediately and we will ensure interpretation is properly restored before resuming the proceedings. The raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen can be used at any time if you wish to speak or alert the chair. Today, we are here to receive a briefing on current and projected processing timelines and acceptance rates at Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada. I would like to take a moment to welcome the Honourable Sean Fraser, Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Welcome, Minister. Thanks for appearing before the committee. He is joined with the IRCC officials, Marianne Campbell-Jarvis, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Strategic and Program Policy, as well as Daniel Mills, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Operations. I would like to make a few comments for the benefit of all the witnesses. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. When you are ready to speak, you can click on the microphone icon to activate your mic. A reminder that all comments should be addressed through the chair. Interpretation in this video conference will work very much like in a regular meeting. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on the mute. Witnesses have 5 minutes for opening remarks. During the rounds of questioning, I will raise colored time cards to the screen to indicate when 1 minute is left. So we'll be using this 1 minute card, a 30-second card, and a stop sign. So I hope everyone takes due consideration of that. And with that, I would like to welcome Minister Fraser, who will begin our discussion with 5 minutes of opening remarks. Thanks a lot, Minister. Floor is yours. You can please begin.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Thank you, colleagues. It's a pleasure to be here. As someone who spent the first 6 years as a member of Parliament sitting on parliamentary committees, let me communicate the respect that I have for the work that we do at committees, and I look forward to seeing what recommendations that you may have to offer.
I would like to thank you so much for inviting me here to appear before the committee today.
Folks, I've got a 10-minute speech and 5 minutes to give it, but let me begin. Comme le savent les membres du comité.
As the members of the committee know, the pandemic has caused applicants' processing delays and backlogs. In the Prime Minister's mandate letter to me, he indicated that one of my priorities is to reduce these processing times and delays brought on by COVID-19. I'm sorry. I want to say
folks, it's not lost on me that there are challenges when it comes to processing in the immigration system, and I look forward to implementing some of the measures that we are planning on, because I think we can make a significant difference. Before we understand how those measures are going to make a positive difference, I think it's essential that we understand how the challenges that we're facing came to be. When I look at the circumstances around the pandemic, it's very clear to me that IRCC's operations have been impacted as much as any department in the Government of Canada. Just for those who may not be aware of the challenges that we are facing, they arise from the fact primarily that during the pandemic, the Government of Canada made a decision to pivot its operations to welcome more newcomers as permanent residents who are already in Canada in order to protect the public from the spread of COVID-19 when our borders were closed. In addition, the pandemic around the world has impacted some of our operations in Canada and in our global locations, causing certain offices to be closed for a period of time. At the same time, when we were welcoming people who were located in Canada already, we continue to see a significant number of applications that were coming in from people who were overseas. This built up a significant number of cases for people who would like to come to Canada that were not already here. I do believe it was the right thing to do at the time, so we could achieve our goal of welcoming the most new permanent residents in any year in Canada's history last year, but we knew that that would come with certain consequences that we now need to deal with. I do want to say, for the folks who've made applications that are overseas, I understand the frustration that you've been experiencing with some of the application processes. But I do want to say that we are working very hard to alleviate some of the challenges that you're facing. I'm very excited about it. Yesterday, and perhaps the place to start is the immigration levels plan that I tabled yesterday. You'll note that a target of 432,000 permanent residents next year is the highest number of permanent residents that Canada will have ever welcomed by a significant margin, more than the 405,000 that we achieved this past year. This is going to help reduce the number of people who are waiting to come to Canada, because we'll be able to welcome more of those who already have an application in the system. But there's other measures that we're putting in place that's going to make a dramatic difference to actually improve the quality of the experience while people are going through the application process. I note in particular the $85 million investment included in the economic and fiscal update this past fall that includes finances for work permit processing, for study permit processing, for proof of citizenship cards, to reduce the inventory of permanent residence cards, and to also expedite the processing of temporary residency visas. But in addition to these measures that we're going to see improvements on, we are also going to have some major functionalities of the new digital platform that we are working on that's going to boost productivity of our department over time and improve the quality of the user experience. In particular, I'd note that the citizenship process has moved to a digital application process, and at the end of your citizenship process, we have moved to virtual ceremonies. We're looking now at additional options that will allow for an electronic oath for people who would like to expedite the finalization of their citizenship process, when the last thing that they need to do is swear the oath in order to become Canadian citizens, and they may choose to celebrate their citizenship at a later time. There's other functionalities that have come online recently, such as digital intake for different lines of business. By this summer, there will be up to 17 different lines of business within IRCC's operations that will allow for a digital intake process for those who are applying to come to Canada. We also have a PR application process near the final stages that will allow you to take part in it electronically. Over the course of this pandemic, we've seen more than 200,000 people avail themselves of this opportunity. One of the things that it really, one of the benefits that are really driven home for me with this one is, during at a time when a lot of in-person services have been compromised as a result of COVID-19, I'm at the end of my time. I didn't see the 1-minute warning. I'll finish very quickly by saying between the digital intake, between the application processes for PR, and the new permanent residency case tracker for family reunification purposes, we're seeing people are able to get real-time information about their files. These digital functions are going to continue to come online, and it will result in an improved experience with Canada's immigration process. I'm thrilled to be here today to discuss some of these measures and look forward to answering whatever questions you may have. Merci tout le monde. C'est un plaisir d'être ici.
Thank you, everyone. It's a great pleasure for me to be here with you today.
Thank you, Minister. So now time is up. So voting app will be opening soon. So we will suspend the meeting for a few minutes so that everyone can vote. And we will go into a round of questioning as soon as everyone has voted on the app. Thank you. Minister. All the members have voted. Madame Lalonde might have to go and verify, so she will do that. We will now start our first round of questioning, and we will start with Mr. Hallen. Mr. Hallen, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Madam Chair, thank you so much. Minister, thank you for showing up and in person. It's great to see you. So last night at our Special Committee on Afghanistan, we had 2 retired Major Generals, and what they testified was that they had sent a letter back to IRCC back in July of 2021 asking for a pipeline for those refugees that were interpreters to get them here. Obviously, they had no response. You had 23 of your own Liberal colleagues write a letter December 2020 and, again, fell on deaf ears. The UNHCR testified at that same committee that they had a plan to evacuate vulnerable Afghans back in the early of 2021. And again, there was no response. I've written many letters to your office, to you directly, without a response, and thousands of Afghan interpreters and Afghan nationals are stranded in Afghanistan. What everyone wants to know is what tangible steps are you or your department taking to bring those refugees here, because no one has seen a proper plan yet.
Madam Chair, thanks very much through you to the member for this important question. And look, the situation in Afghanistan is what justified us making what I would suggest is one of the most substantial commitments to resettle 40,000 Afghan refugees of any country in the world, and certainly on a per capita basis. The circumstances that the members described is precisely why we have established not just an ordinary stream for humanitarian refugee resettlement out of Afghanistan. But, Madam Chair, I believe I have the same amount of time as the member.
Let the member...
is specifically why we established the special immigration measures to target those folks who made a contribution, a significant enduring contribution to Canada. The steps that we are doing to welcome them here include working with referral partners in DND and Global Affairs Canada to make sure that we know who it is that worked with the Government of Canada so we can bring them here. There are challenges on the ground that we are sorting out with partners, state partners, partners in the region and international organizations to help facilitate safe passage of those folks who have not yet left Afghanistan. But I would share, Madam Chair, with now more than 7,500 Afghan refugees in Canada, we're seeing a regular pace of arrivals, and it's very encouraging to me in this position.
Minister, what are the metrics then? What kind of monthly metrics are we looking at? How many people do you think you're going to bring in a month?
So it's not, the effort is not sort of measured every single month a particular number of people. If you were to do the math, you would see that the commitment of 40,000 by next year is what the publicly stated target has been. That would put you in the ballpark of somewhere 1,250 to 1,500 or so, depending on one month. That doesn't mean that same number is there every month. Some months it will be more, some months it will be less.
Sure. Can you please table what numbers you think are going to be coming in to this committee?
If you're asking for a written response to rough timelines of folks, but it won't specify every single month the exact number that's scheduled because there's circumstances that will require flexibility month to month.
So one of the issues that bringing people over here is biometrics. We know other countries are able to do that for those Afghan refugees, and again, this ties in with the backlog issue. What is being done for this biometrics issue?
Just a point of clarity, if the honourable member is aware of countries who have access to biometrics inside Afghanistan, I would like to know which countries he's referring to, because I would call them immediately.
Pakistan, as an example, as one of the witnesses had said, can do that, but the issue is also getting people into Pakistan safely. So that's what people want to know. Like, instead of us, you should be sorting this out. It's been quite a while now, right?
So with great respect, Madam Chair, and I know the question is filled only with good intentions, we have had conversations with Pakistan, with the UAE, with Qatar, with the United States, with the UNHCR, with the International Organization for Migration, and with private sector partners, all of whom have the ability to offer biometrics outside of the country. If people can get outside of the country, Canada can perform the biometrics outside of the country. The challenge is not for the humanitarian cases or for special immigration measures applicants that are already outside of Afghanistan. When it comes to biometrics, the challenge is for people who are inside Afghanistan. As you can appreciate, the Taliban, a listed terror organization in Canadian law, has seized control of Afghanistan, and they are not interested in facilitating Canadian processing staff
Minister,
to do their job inside Afghanistan.
That also ties back into the fact that Canada was not prepared. And on top of that, an unnecessary election was called, and that totally threw everything off. So one of the generals yesterday made a very interesting statement, and I quote, "Stop sending emails, be transparent with the Afghan applicants, and start talking to them person to person. UK, US, France, Ukraine sent people into Kabul to get people. Canada sent emails." And end quote. And this is very, it's true because I hear this in my office all the time. When will these auto replies and no responses stop? And when can we show some real transparency to these refugees that are so desperate to get out?
So you raised two issues with that question. One with respect to the timing of the evacuation. The second on communication with applicants. Sorry, Madam Chair, I can't see what flag you're holding.
30 seconds.
Oh, okay. So very quickly, at the time Kabul fell, Canada had not had a military mission with the logistics capacity of moving people since 2014.
Was an election,
Madam Chair, I believe I have the floor.
necessary then, or was it? I would just like to say that respectfully, like that's what happened.
Just
I would
1%
just say,
at a time. Let him finish, and then we will come to you.
I would just say, like, was an election plan more important than an evacuation plan? Can you please answer that?
Sorry
yes
for
or no?
interrupting. Time is up. Sorry for interrupting. Time is up. So, I would request all the members to please, if you ask a question, allow the minister to answer the question, and only one person should speak at one time, and all the questions should be directed through the chair. So please make sure that if the members are asking any question, time should be given to the minister to answer the question. So thank you. Now we will proceed to MP Ali. MP Ali, you have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed. You are on mute.
Yes, I was having a difficulty. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Minister, for your time. I have a question. There are approximately 1 million vacant jobs in Canada. As a result, more companies are looking beyond our borders for the talent. What can I tell businesses in my riding who needs worker on what our government is doing to ensure they have workers they need in a timely manner?
Thank you to the honourable member for this important question. So just to put it into perspective, the economic recovery from COVID-19 in Canada has been as strong as any developed nation in the world. Before the Omicron variant landed in our communities, we saw 107% of the jobs lost during the pandemic recovered. GDP had exceeded pre-pandemic levels, and our labour force participation rate had hit an all-time high. That said, we still had, at the end of the year, about 900,000 job vacancies in the Canadian economy. We need to adopt policies that will foster economic growth, and immigration is going to help drive the growth that we need. The Immigration Levels Plan that I tabled yesterday has a strong economic focus, and it's designed to help ensure that we can get as many workers here as our system allows to fill those gaps in the labour force. We're talking about workers in our healthcare sector and our transportation sector. Go down any main street, talk to a restaurant, or go to a machine shop and see if they get talent on the shop floor to fill the orders that they otherwise could fill. Immigration is going to play a major role, and with yesterday's Levels Plan that I tabled, we now have one of the strongest tools that we've ever had in our history to get workers here on a permanent basis. But this only scratches the surface because we also have the opportunity to use our demand-driven temporary immigration programs to get workers here more quickly who might not be needed in the long term as permanent residents. The combined impact of the Levels Plan with our temporary programs is going to give us the tools we need to leverage immigration to get workers here to fill those jobs where business owners can't find Canadians in their own community to fill the jobs that they need to maximize the economic growth potential. I'll leave my answer there, but I think you could appreciate, Madam Chair, I could spend several hours on this subject.
Thank you, Minister. Through Madam Chair, Minister, many of my constituents have immigrated from Pakistan. They see that students' application from some neighboring countries have approval rates of 75% to 85%, but student applications from Pakistan have an approval rate of 21% or 22%. Often my constituents wonder if this is because student visa processing is not done in Pakistan, but rather farmed out to processing centers in other countries. Minister, can you tell me how you might help increase approval rates to an equitable level in Pakistan? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I think it is important that we don't just pursue large numbers of immigration, which is essential, but that we also pursue fairness in the system so people trust that the decisions that are taken under the system are done in an equitable way, free from treating people from one country of origin different than another. We're looking for talent. We're looking for people who meet the eligibility criteria. One of the bright spots that I would point the honourable member to is that we've seen the Students Direct Stream. That's a program that's used to facilitate and expedite the welcoming of international students into Canada for the purpose of study. We've seen an increase in Pakistan with the Students Direct Stream to, I believe, 46%. And if I'm off from memory, I'll follow up with the member personally. I think that is going to be part of the path forward. We also are seeing that in countries that have had more refusals, it's often a result of the fact that we're seeing so many applications coming in, not necessarily that they're being treated differently than they have been treated before. I think that this is a huge opportunity to expand the Student Direct Stream across different jurisdictions so we can have a higher rate of acceptance, but more importantly, welcome more and more students here, because international students who settle in Canada show extraordinary social, economic, cultural outcomes over the long term, and have the opportunity, in my personal opinion, to make excellent permanent residents should they end up staying in Canada beyond their period of study.
Thank you, Minister. Through Madam Chair, family reunification is really important, and families have been waiting for a long time during the pandemic. Can you tell me how long families can expect to wait if they are applying to sponsor their spouse today?
I'll give you the short answer first, and if time allows, I'll give you the long answer. The short answer is 12 months. We are back to the service standard for processing times when it comes to family reunification. There are some real frustrations with people who got caught during that challenge I described during my opening remarks about how the pandemic prevented us from welcoming as many people from other countries that would normally have come in. Through changes that we've made and through investments we've made in the system, including the hiring of 500 staff, we now have the capacity to process new applications and family reunification streams in 12 months in accordance with the service standard that has existed since before the pandemic.
15 seconds, MP Ali.
I think it's, I'm going to give 15 more seconds to Minister.
Well, I'm glad you did, because
I
just remembered I skipped over one of your previous answers about local processing facilities. My own view is that we can have local expertise to facilitate the information and the understanding of local cultures, local populations. But I do believe that by leveraging our global network, we have the opportunity to take advantage of certain offices that have capacity to boost the productivity for countries all over the world. And that short answer didn't do it justice.
Thank you, Minister. Sorry for interrupting. Time is up. We will now proceed to MP Brunel Desap. MP Brunel Desap, you will have 6 minutes. Because the members who are virtual cannot see the cards, so I will just interrupt and say 1 minute 30 seconds. Okay, so MP Brunel Desap.
Yes, I want a point of order, please. I was going to say I can't see the card, so how will I know? But you've said that it very clearly that you will intervene to let me know. Hello, Minister. I'm so happy to see you here today. It might be that I have to interrupt you, but please just answer my questions directly. First of all, it seems to me that you said in the press conference that there would be some $85 million available to bring things back to normal. Is that the case?
Appreciate, depending on who's applying, where they're coming from, the specific amount of time may be different for individual cases, but we will see a market improvement with the $85 million.
Okay, donc ça veut
Okay, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to see a zero backlog in Quebec within a year then. That there will be a certain time frame for people who want to come in to study here. So the 40,000 Afghan refugees that were promised, will that be settled? And what about the temporary foreign workers? What will be settled here?
So just for the sake of clarity, there's a couple different issues that you've raised that are distinct from the 85 million you've raised before. So the 40,000 Afghan refugees are at a pace where we expect that they will all be resettled in Canada by the end of next year. With respect to the processing times for temporary foreign workers in Quebec, I would point out that Quebec is actually the jurisdiction where we process work permits more quickly than every other jurisdiction. There is, of course, a challenge because there are different documents that need to precede the processing of the work permits with respect to the equivalent of an LMIA, for example, and the particular document that's an equivalent in Quebec. I appreciate there was 3 or 4 questions there, Monsieur Brunel-Duceppe. Est-ce que vous avez des clarifications?
Do you have any clarifications? Because you did ask 3 or 4 questions at once, Mr. Brunel-Duceppe. Well, I'm very happy with your answers. Now, Minister, strangely, in your briefing document that we received in the blog, further to a request for information, and I have to say that the requests for information are very high, and there is an increasing number of rises in the processing level, in the delays, and for that. So last week at your press conference, you seemed that you were very optimistic, far more optimistic than the information that was in your document. So when we have these briefing sessions with the department, are you on the same page?
Look, I'm an optimist by nature, but I'm optimistic not just out of my natural attitude. It's because we've got some very good news that's been put forward. With respect to requests for information, I think there's a lot of people who are probably very frustrated because they've been seeking updates on their particular case. One example of how the measures that we announced recently in a press conference will make a really serious difference will include the introduction of the PR case tracker, for example. 80% of the cases that come through the MP line, which you'll be familiar with, are simply seeking a status update. If we go upstream and we proactively provide that information to people on their own device, they won't need to call IRCC. They won't need to call their Member of Parliament's office. They won't have to wait months for an update because it will be in their pocket. The statistics that you were citing, I believe, actually precede the impact that the $85 million and the new digital measures are going to have. To the extent that I'm mistaken about that, I would j'invite mes fonctionnaires pour...
I would invite my officials to give you some more clarification. Okay. But I circled the date on the calendar to be sure that in a year from now, I'm going to see if your optimism pays off. You talked about a way of being fair in treating the applications and processing them. Well, how do you distinguish then between francophones and anglophones for certain programs, particularly in the context of foreign students? That's important for francophone communities outside of Quebec, more so than for those in Quebec.
Okay, je suis...
I'm very happy to be able to shed some light on this because the situation in Quebec is very different compared to the situation outside of Quebec. For the immigrants who go to Quebec,
difficult listening to my own translation in my ear. So for international students, I think this is really, really important because I think they offer one of the greatest opportunities for us to increase the number of francophone newcomers. Je veux augmenter le nombre de nouveaux...
I want to increase the number of new francophone arrivals. And to come in is the best opportunity.
And with the student direct stream in countries like Senegal and Morocco that have seen an increase in the approval rates. There are still challenges when I look at some of the numbers in certain other countries. I'm thinking about Cote d'Ivoire, for example, that we can continue to look at. But when I look at the approval rate for Francophones and Anglophones coming from within those regions or certain countries, the difference is not enormous. To the extent we continue to work to close that gap, I think it's essential that we do, because I think it's good for our country. I think it's good for the province of Quebec.
Yes, but there are more refusals than there are.
Voting time is up. We will have to proceed to the next member. Ms. Kwan will have 6 minutes for her round of questioning. Ms. Kwan, you can please begin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Minister for coming to the committee. I just want to follow up on the Afghanistan resettlement issue. 2 years to resettle 40,000 Afghanistan refugees is a long time. For some, they may not be able to make it due to the urgency of the situation. Many people are saying that they are having trouble and difficulty accessing or being able to produce the various documentations that IRCC requires. So my first question is this: will the Minister agree to waive the documentation requirements, including the need to obtain biometrics for Afghans fleeing persecution, until they're safely on Canadian soil?
We don't have plans currently to waive the requirement of biometrics, and I think this is really important because 80% of the pieces of information that we learn about that render someone inadmissible for security purposes, for example, come from biometric requirements. I think it would be inappropriate for us to waive that requirement given the circumstances that we're dealing with. That said, we are doing whatever we can to expedite the resettlement. I would point out, and I don't think time will allow, Madam Chair, and I want to respect my colleagues' time, that the timelines that we're talking about to resettle 40,000 Afghan refugees far exceeds the performance of virtually every other country in the world. I think there's some mistaken conflation between the opportunity we had to settle large numbers of refugees from Syria as opposed to Afghanistan. The circumstances were very different, and if time allows in a subsequent question, I'd be happy to clarify why that's the case.
Well, maybe the Minister can submit that information to committee in writing. But I actually don't accept that, because I do believe that the government can waive the requirements. That's not to say that they won't have security checks. It's just that when they're in Canadian soil, once they're safely on the ground here, you can then proceed with all of that work. I'm going to leave that with the Minister to ponder and urge the Minister to be considered. Will the Minister waive the refugee determination requirements for Afghan refugees, especially for those under the Group of 5 private sponsorship stream?
So a bit of clarity here. For folks who are already inside Afghanistan, we establish an extraordinary measure through the Special Immigrations Program, where we are not requiring a refugee status determination for those who've qualified because they have served Canada in some capacity and qualify for our programs. I would point out as well that if you're operating through the private sponsorship streams for the sponsorship agreement holders, if you're working with the sponsorship agreement holder, there's not a requirement for a refugee status determination, which I think is a pretty important feature. The members asked about the G5 and community sponsorship pieces. Sorry, I think the member's trying to get back in, Madam Chair.
Yeah, and that's exactly the point, is the G5 refugee determination requirements. Why require that for the G5?
So look, I haven't taken any solutions off the table. I do sense when I look at the data that the success rate and the ability to process applications more quickly and with a higher degree of success, if we focus on the sponsorship agreement holders, we do tend to see far more people be approved far more quickly. To the extent that there are other solutions members would like to put on the table, of course, I'll consider them in good faith, and I've not taken any solution off the table.
Thank you, Minister. I've written to you about this, and I haven't gotten a response, so please respond and please take the action. I'd like to ask the Minister, there are a number of internationally educated nurses who have worked hard to meet Canadian standards and are licensed to practice here in Canada, are unable to do so because they do not have an open work permit and their PR application is stuck with lengthy delays. So will the Minister immediately issue a bridging open work permit to those waiting for their PR application to be processed and expedite their PR applications?
So for people who have PR applications that are healthcare professionals, we are already expediting applications. There's a unique issue around internationally educated nurses that I think we can make progress on, but the reasons why one person may be delayed could be very different why other people are delayed. Some of them have come through different programs where they are specifically approved to come to Canada to work as caregivers, for example. Others may not be. People who are here in Canada now can simultaneously make an application for permanent residency to come in through a different stream. We do, however, need to continue to work with provinces who have jurisdiction over the regulating bodies, who manage the qualifications that a person is required to have in order to practice in their given field. That's something that I'm looking forward to continuing my conversations with every province in Canada, because I think it presents an excellent opportunity to increase the number of healthcare workers in Canada.
I'm going to interject here. The issue is actually not qualification. They have met all the requirements, and their problem is that the only thing is impeding them from practicing their craft and their profession is immigration. That is the issue, and I've written to the minister about that. Please read that letter and respond to it and address the issue. Now, with respect to caregivers, already there's been significant delays in the processing. Many have waited for almost 2 years without any update on their files beyond a confirmation that the application has been received. There isn't even processing standards for this stream. As of January 17, 2022, IRCC has indicated that the home care child care provider pilot is close to new applicants. The yesterday's announcement on levels does not address this issue. What will the government do to ensure that more caregivers get into the stream?
Look, Madam Chair, I believe we're out of time, but very quickly, we have processed more than 6,000 files last year. We're in the middle of a pilot program for both caregivers through a child care and personal care worker. I think because of the limitation on time and the need to respect other members' time, I'd have to follow up with the member to provide a fulsome answer, given that time has been exhausted.
I wrote to the minister as well on this issue, so the minister, please read the letter and respond to me in writing.
Thank you, Ms. Kwan. Your time is up. So based on the time we have with the minister, for the second round, we will have like 4 minutes for Mr. Redekop and Mr. Dhaliwal. And Mr. Brunel-Dessap and Ms. Kwan will have 2 minutes each. So with that, we will start our second round with Mr. Redekop. Mr. Redekop, you have 4 minutes for your round of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I've witnessed remarkable callousness from you and your officials towards immigrants and refugees that are trying to come to Canada. My office has contacted your ministerial inquiries unit on multiple cases of immigrants where correction of simple paperwork errors or a bit of compassion would actually save lives of people from overseas trying to come into Saskatoon. And I wrote you directly about Bawa Bala, who is a Canadian citizen, and his wife, Antarpreet Kaur, along with their infant daughter, Brabhamjot, who's also Canadian. You're refusing to allow Madam Kaur into Canada on the basis that she's not expecting to leave the country. Well, that's exactly the point. She needs to come to Canada to be with her Canadian husband and her Canadian daughter. She has a legitimate path to permanent residency. So I want to know why you guys have so harshly refused Madam Kaur's application to be with her Canadian husband and daughter.
Just to clarify, I won't get into the specifics of individual case files. There's obviously privacy concerns, and I don't have the file in front of me in any event. But I think the member raises a really good point. There's people who would make excellent permanent residences based on their connections to folks who are already here. One of my mandate letter commitments that we're working on developing the policy to support right now is to establish a temporary residence visa for people who are awaiting a decision on their spousal reunification files. To me, when I hear about these cases, and they're in my constituency too, to know that families are being kept apart because they can't qualify for a TRV on the basis that they won't return home is something that we have to take a look at. I'm glad that I've been mandated to doing it, and I look forward to working with members of this House who've seen this concern in their constituencies, because I think we have an opportunity to make a major correction that will improve the quality of life for a lot of people who want to come to Canada.
So another example is Manpreet Kaur case. As you're aware, Manpreet Kaur and her husband are permanent residents that live in my riding of Saskatoon. She wishes to return to India to say goodbye to her mother before she passes away, as she's very sick. But as of today, her PR card is 66 days overdue, and she can't leave the country. Now, you just said that they're typically 1 to 2 weeks behind. Well, here's a case where it's 66 days. And your department's reply said, quote, the application cannot be processed faster at this time. There is no urgent procedure for new PRs. If your applicant wishes to find out how long it may take to process their first PR card, please visit the processing times page. We hope this information was helpful. End quote. It's not helpful. What would be helpful is to have the PR card done in a reasonable time. So is this a systematic failure based upon incompetence, or are you maliciously blocking PR cards for people who want to see their dying parents?
Look, I'll pass on commenting on whether there's malicious intent behind any of these files. I can reassure all members of this House that any challenges that we are facing are due to the circumstances tied to the pressures that COVID-19 has put on Canada's immigration system, including on PR cards, which typically require somebody to show up for an in-person appointment when many of the offices have been closed down and there hasn't been that opportunity for face-to-face engagement. That said, I think there's a huge opportunity to make progress on this specific piece. When I referred to a 1 to 2 week inventory in a mailroom on PR cards, that is the result of the $85 million that was recently announced. When that is fully deployed, it's going to allow us to reduce the inventory to that reasonable amount of time. I don't think under normal circumstances that a 66-day wait is appropriate for a PR card. That's why we're making these investments to get back to what's reasonable after the pandemic has had such a dramatic impact on our day-to-day operations for these kinds of in-person appointments.
Is there any plan to get back to in-person offices, and when will that be happening, for example, in Saskatoon?
Look, the specific locations will depend on the public health situation in a given jurisdiction. What the answer is in Saskatoon may be different than in Halifax, may be different than New Delhi. What we have tried to do is to pivot to virtual services wherever possible, equip staff to work from home. There are some offices globally where that capacity does not exist. Madam Chair, I saw the warning that we're just about out of time, so I'd be happy to elaborate further on a subsequent question.
Thank you. We will now proceed to Mr. Dhaliwal. Mr. Dhaliwal, you will have 4 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will split my time with the Madam Kyabaga, 2 minutes each. My question, Minister, first of all, thank you for coming here and thank you for those $85 million and the steps that you're taking. But I'm as the busiest office in Canada. I mean, your department can tell you that these numbers not going to help. People like Mr. Ali raised, the temporary foreign workers that most of the small businesses that need. I give you a particular example of Maharaja restaurant in my constituency. It took him 2 ministers. You know, your predecessor, I took him for the tour of the restaurant, and they spent millions and millions of dollars, and they could not even open up the restaurant during the last ministership and even today. Because they applied for cooks, temporary permits, and that has not yet been processed. How do you see that your plan will help businesses like those that are going through tremendous amount of stress with millions and millions dollar investment at stake?
Thanks very much. So first, there's different issues that are at play for this kind of a circumstance, and let me just clarify the difference. So for general work permit processing, the $85 million that I referred to is actually going to make a significant difference and should allow us to get back to the service standard. There's a unique issue impacting people who are coming from India in particular because of the impact of COVID-19 on our operations. I mentioned in my previous response there are certain areas where we have not been able to allow people to work from home. The New Delhi office is one of those particular areas. All of that said, I'm very optimistic because I'm working with Minister Qualtrough, who's responsible for employment and workforce development, to see how we can leverage the programs that we have shared custody over to facilitate and expedite the welcoming of temporary workers and potentially future permanent residents to Canada to deal with the very acute labor shortage that we're wrestling with right across the country.
We will now proceed to Ms. Kyabaga.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Minister, for coming to our committee and responding to a lot of the questions that we had. And I think a lot of my questions have already been answered through the other questions that people have asked. But one of the recurring issues in my writing is family reunification and refugee sponsorship processing times. Minister, I've had many conversations with members of my community who are concerned that the length of time that the family reunifications are taking. Can you speak on how long families can expect to wait if they're applying to sponsor their spouses today?
Yeah, thank you. And this came up in a previous question as well. So this is one line of business like every other that was impacted significantly by the pressures of COVID-19. Thankfully, family reunification is one of the areas where I think there's been the greatest amount of progress. And we are now, for somebody who applies today, they should expect a 12-month return, which is back to the service standard. In addition, and this is one of the things that is going to make a big difference for the user experience experience. The new PR case tracker is available today for family reunification cases. So someone who's not just worried about how long it's going to take to get here, but doesn't know where their application is in the process, now has the ability to log in to get specific information on their file and not just see generic information about what the standard processing time would be in a non-pandemic situation. This is going to make a major difference and relieve a lot of anxieties for people who are worried about not knowing where their case is.
Quick 15 seconds you have.
Thank you. So I don't know if I have time to ask any other question, but
Your time is almost up now. Okay, thank you.
I'm back Thursday too.
We will now proceed to Mr. Brunel Desapp for 2 minutes. Mr. Brunel Desapp, you have 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We've been told on a variety of occasions that it could be that people would be better protected in terms of the timelines for processing requests. Are you following up on that? Are there reasonable timelines? But why shouldn't there be an ombudsman for immigration? I'd like to hear you.
Sure. Look, there's different, and as I said before, I'm not someone to take any different ideas off the table. The idea of an ombudsperson is something that's not something I've been mandated to implement in my mandate letter from the Prime Minister. One of the things that I think is important, though, is that there are different facets that ensure procedural fairness for individual applicants through the immigration system today. Of course, people who are applying to come on a temporary basis.
I'm going to interrupt, Minister. I just wanted to know, I don't know, I didn't really want to know whether you agree or not about an ombudsperson. You're ambivalent, I'd say. There's a crisis in Afghanistan it's ballooned into a humanitarian crisis. Yesterday, I heard the Major General Fraser speak about it. So my question is this. What is your plan to get the people that out of Afghanistan? The UK, the USA speak directly to the people rather than just changing emails.
So there are some people who are making their way outside of Afghanistan for onward settlement to Canada now. Some of them are here already. We're continuing to work with organizations who do have a presence in the region or on the ground to ensure that to the extent we can secure safe passage for Afghan refugees outside of the country and onward travel to Canada, that we're doing everything we can.
And that's not really the issue, Minister. Why don't you speak directly to them rather than exchanging emails like the UK and the USA and France do? That's the question.
Sure, and we do plan to be reaching out to everybody who's going to be eligible for our program to ensure that they're able to be resettled into Canada. I think it's essential that we do everything we can to give them real-time.
Sorry for interrupting.
If our allies...
Sorry for interrupting, Mr. Brunel Desapp. Time is up. We will now proceed to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you will have 2 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed.
Volleyball Canada CEO and representative of FIB, IOC, and Pro Bono Canada would like to meet with the minister to discuss the plan to assist the Afghan women volleyball team to come to Canada safely. Would the minister be willing to meet with them?
Look, I'm willing to meet with many groups. I think, as you can appreciate, there are hundreds, probably thousands of meeting requests that we're trying to wade through to make sure we're giving attention to those who may qualify for our programs. I'll work with my team to look at where my time is best spent to make sure that we're able to work with groups that have the best chance of getting Afghans who qualify for our programs to resettle in Canada.
So I didn't hear a yes to that question. The minister just said they'll look at it. Perhaps he can assign a staff to work with me with respect to this meeting requirement or meeting request. The backlog for outbound family reunification applications are significant. Is the minister saying that the 12-month processing time would apply to outbound family reunification applications as well?
Look, member, if I need to extend by a minute, could you just clarify the difference between which streams you're talking about?
I'm talking about outbound family reunification, spousal sponsorship applications.
Look, I don't want to risk. Do you mean people who are outside of Canada now that are applying to come into Canada?
Correct. The spouses are outside of Canada.
Yes, my understanding is the 12-month service standard will remain for those applicants.
how long would it take for the ministry to actually process all the backlogs?
It's a difficult question because there's applications that continue to come in large numbers. So even if you were processing cases in real time and everything was in the service standard, you're still going to have hundreds of thousands of cases that are pending at any given point in time. So it would depend on which stream you're talking about. It would depend on where you would like to reduce a level
the
to.
Same stream that we've been discussing.
Sorry for interrupting.
For
Sorry.
outbound spousal sponsorship. Maybe the minister can submit that answer.
Look, I'm happy to work with our officials to give whatever information we can after my committee appearance today.
Thank you, Minister. So with this, our first panel comes to an end. And on behalf of all the members of this committee, I would really like to thank Minister Fraser for appearing before the committee today and to talk about the important work he is doing to make sure that our country remains open to new immigrants. So thank you, Minister, and the members would be really looking forward to see you again on Thursday. So
I'll be back. Thanks so much, folks. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. So we will suspend the meeting for a few minutes as to allow the officials to come back, and there will be no opening remarks. We will go into round of questionings after that. So I'll suspend the meeting for 2-3 minutes, and then we will come back. For this panel, we are joined by the IRCC officials. I would like to welcome Marianne Campbell-Jarvis, the Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Strategic and Program Policy, and as well as Danielle Mills, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Operations. So we will proceed directly to the round of questioning, and we will start with Mr. Seebeck. Mr. Seebeck, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Great. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. When we look at the backlogs, there's been a number of reports and others that have listed what these numbers are. For example, 548,000 permanent resident applications, including 112,392 refugee applications, 775,000 temporary resident applications, study permits, work permits, etc., 468,000 Canadian citizenship applications. The minister came before committee today. He suggested that this injection of $85 million is going to resolve this situation and get everything back to normal processing times. When I look at these kind of numbers, I find that to be an extraordinary statement. So I have a couple of questions. Number one, on what did he base his answer? And number two, what are the metrics being relied on? Is there a document internal that was prepared for the minister for his appearance today to say that this $85 million will have this result? And if there is that document, can you please produce it today in addition to the answer that you're going to give me now?
Merci, Madame Chair, Madame la Présidente, pour la...
Thank you very much for the question. Just to answer the member, as the minister mentioned, this $85 million will not address the inventory. The $85 million that will be added will allow for the time for students, for student visas, work visas, and permanent residency cards to be improved. And the rate at the end of the year, we hope we will go back to the normal rate of processing 60 days and 61 days for permanent residency.
Well, you just said that the $85 million is for students, but then you said permanent residency. So, is this $85 million? Is it being applied to deal with the $500,000 backlog in permanent residence applications?
Le 85 millions qui a été...
The $85 million that was announced at the beginning of December will allow us to get back to processing rates for students, for study visas, for workers' visas, and also permanent residency cards. But with respect to permanent residents, there are different rates that are standards in the service. As the minister mentioned, for the family class, it is 12 months. But the $85 million will not allow for improving all of the permanent rates. But as the minister mentioned, it will develop other areas where there will be electronic access. So the $85 million has a variety of aspects, but our commitment is to come back to the processing rates, to the standards set for temporary workers, for students, and temporary cards, temporary residency cards, pardon me.
I'm not sure I understand, but is there a plan in place with dollars attached that is going to deal with the backlog of 548,000 permanent resident applications, including 112,000 refugee applications, and the 468,000 Canadian citizenship applications? Is there a specific plan and dollars earmarked to reduce those backlogs?
Chair, Thank you once again for the question. For permanent residents, what is important to know is this. We are governed by the annual plan for level of reference. And the annual immigration plan exists. And for example, to get to last year of 401,000 permanent residencies, there was a 500,000 transactions in persons. So that allowed us to reach our immigration level. As the minister mentioned, next year we will have a reference rate that will be 402,000, and so the department will then be able to make decisions to issue some 150,000 persons to be able to respond to the immigration plan on an annual basis.
I don't think that I'm getting an answer to my question. So I'm going to try and go back to the first question with the $85 million in funding that is supposed to improve some aspect of processing times. Has there been an internal document prepared to show where these monies are going to be allocated and the anticipated result of those monies? Because the minister has stated, and you've now stated, this is going to improve things. I can't imagine that this has just been done because you allocated some money and imagined
Sorry
that it would work.
for interrupting, Mr. Seebeck. Your time is up. Maybe you can come back in the second round. So we will now proceed to MP El-Khoury. MP El-Khoury, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and welcome to our guests. My first question is addressed to all of you. How do you see the commitment in Canada's role on the ground over there? And how do you evaluate Canada's performance in respect of the performance of other countries? Can you elaborate on Canada's example?
Ms. Campbell, you are mute.
I don't hear.
If you can unmute yourself.
Je m'excuse.
I apologize, Madam Chair. If I understood your question, certainly Canada has a very good outreach in terms of other countries and their performance, and particularly that of the UK, Australia, France, to be able to attach high performance marks. I don't really know if the question is specific to a business line.
No, c'est correct. J'ai bien.
No, I really understood. No, I understood the interpretation, but I'm just wondering about the goal of your question, the intent. Is your answer finished? I asked how you would assess, how would you compare Canada's role to other countries' roles? Do other countries have sponsorship programs like Canada does? That's really what I want to know about. Well, thank you for the clarification. It is that deals with sponsorship for refugees. For the moment, Canada is a major leader in sponsorship for refugees, particularly in terms of other countries, the UK and Australia, for example. Canada's sponsorship is one of leadership. Now, how to evaluate that, how to assess it? Well, you can assess it on a 3 or 5 year basis to assess the performance of our systems and processes. Okay. You know, in Afghanistan, women and girls are living in terrible conditions, in a terrible situation. In view of that, are there programs that are dedicated to support women's rights? For example, women don't have the right to work there. And we see that that there are parents that are actually selling their daughters. Do you have a plan to address this type of thing? That would say that it was thanks to Canada that it was corrected. Thank you once again for the question, Madam Chair. Certainly, Canada attaches a high priority to the situation of women and girls in Afghanistan. But there are other vulnerable populations as well. I want to mention two things. First of all, our priority is in the refugees program that involves women, and that's a priority. And second, the government has launched a program to defend human rights for those who defend human rights in Afghanistan. It's very important to do so for vulnerable people, not just for women, but certainly for women. You know the geography of Afghanistan and the conditions of work there in which you have to operate comfortably is really not easy. Is the Taliban complying with international regulations in terms of its operation there? Madam Chair, thank you so much for the question. Certainly, I agree with the question that the situation is so complex in Afghanistan, but I think the rest of the question should be answered by the Minister of Foreign Affairs, who is better placed to answer. How, then, do you see Canada's efforts to help the refugees? There have been highly respected efforts by departments, and Canada is working to bring these people here as quickly as possible. But given the complexity of the process and the problem itself, and how do you see the possibility to accelerate the process to expedite them coming to Canada? Well, thank you for the question.
Campbell, time is up. Maybe you will get another opportunity to answer that. We will now proceed to Mr. Brunel Dessep. Mr. Brunel Dessep, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you also to our witnesses. I thank them for being here at the committee. We appreciate their presence. February the 1st, we were told that there was an advanced data analysis system that would be used in the context of visitors' visas. I'd like to know what you think about that. Is there anybody who can answer my question? Oh, I'm so sorry. I apologize, Madam Chair. I had a problem with my computer. Yes, we're making progress with a lot of data that deal with historical data, and that allows us then to sort, to triage the visitors' applications. So there are a certain number of factors that are taken into consideration, but I can't, unfortunately, give further detail about the items that are taken into consideration because of security concerns and the nature of the process that we have developed. I can assure the member, though, that the data is there. It is reviewed sporadically, and we are adapting to the constantly changing reality. Yes, but is there a legal context to the processing that you can talk to us about? The systems that were developed of advanced analytics are based on Treasury Board policies that are very stringent and there is also a privacy impact assessment that takes into account that establishes the context of what can be used. Certainly, our legal people and the departments are completely involved, and this is why we have the different components for the internet. Yes, but if I understand then that it is for the purposes of privacy, is that it? The parameters can't be made public? Well, Madam Chair, I can't really share information about that. This advanced analytics is going to allow us to move ahead more quickly, but we will also be able to respect the nature of the privacy of individuals' information. Yes, but do you see any difference, set aside the volume, any difference in the processing? Are there any anomalies? Madam Chair, with respect, the member is talking about here the travelers' visas, visitors' visas that exist and has existed since 2018. We have action within the department for, say, applications, say, from China, and that has been seen in the context of the overall visa applications. Well, you know, the system Chinook that is there for strangers, is there any type of crystallization, any type of possibility that Chinook might exacerbate the problem of applications coming from Francophone countries abroad? Unfortunately, for some people, some students from Francophone Africa face some difficulty. Thank you. Madam Chair, I don't know if it was really a question there. It was more a statement, I think. I really didn't understand any question there, but as far as Chinook is concerned, it is based on Excel. It doesn't take any decisions. It is not. It's really just an Excel page, which is expressing the information that is then transposed into an image to be better read. You're saying there's no algorithms then? Is that what you're saying? This is what has just been said to us by one of the Francophone officials, unfortunately. The General Fraser said to us, though, that we are one of the only countries that doesn't have any staff on the ground there, and that could exacerbate any existing problems. Do you think Canada should have people on the ground in Afghanistan so that their wait to come here would be less long? Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. With respect to people on the ground in Afghanistan, I think that is something that can be assessed by my colleagues in Global Affairs Canada. Yes, but you know, I'm sure the Department of Foreign Affairs or Global Affairs would certainly want to have more people on the ground. Would they not?
The time is up. Thank you. You will get another opportunity. We will now proceed to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you will have 6 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the officials for being here today. Could the officials please table to committee by the end of the month how many applications are in the backlog broken down by each of the streams?
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Est-ce que
Thank you so much, Chair. Could the member just give me a little more detail? What streams?
business, or you're talking about a
All the
specific line of
streams.
business?
All the streams, for each of the streams, how much backlog exists in all of the streams.
Madame la Présidente, il me fera plaisir de
Madam Chair, I'd be very happy to give you that information. If the member has any more specific questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Could the official also provide to committee by the end of the month a breakdown of the $85 million announced in the economic fall update that's been allocated to IRCC, and with the detailed breakdown on where it is being spent and what stream would it be utilized for the purposes of reducing backlog, and what is their projected outcome with that injection of resources in reducing the backlog?
Madam Chair, we will certainly look at that question, and we'll have discussions with our CFO and do our best to respond to that question in writing, I believe. Thank you.
Yes, please. And then along with it, could official also provide the FTEs that has been assigned in each of the streams during this period in comparison to pre-COVID period, so that we can have an understanding to see where things are at in terms of actual staffing resources. And with respect to the $85 million injection, the additional staffing resources that would be put in place, how many additional FTEs would be added to which stream, if we can have that information as well.
Madam Chair, we'd be pleased to do our best, but I do want to caution a few things with that question. My colleague may be pleased to speak about it, but we did do a significant number of transformations over the course of COVID, so we might not really be comparing apples to apples. I don't know if my colleague, Mr. Mills, would like to elaborate on that, if that's helpful.
Oui, merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. So we best to provide to the member the detail, but one thing that we have to take into consideration is that we are operating under a global network. So we are moving people around all line of business, and especially with COVID, cette amplitude-là a pris de l'ampleur parce qu'avec...
That's gotten even bigger because of country conditions. We want to be able to protect the health and safety of our own employees, and we've had to move them around. A static date cannot be, you might be comparing apples and oranges.
Well, if the committee could receive information on which offices have actually had resources impacted and how many staffing resources been impacted as a result of COVID, that will also give us a sense of the lay of the land. Because the reality right now is that we don't really know, no one really knows what's going on, and all people are seeing is a humongous backlog and delay in their application. So shedding some light and providing some transparency to the situation would be very helpful. So I would be looking forward to receiving that information. The minister said that outbound spousal sponsorship applications is meeting the 12-month processing requirements, standards. But yet I hear from families all the time that they are in the system for 2 years, 3 years, indiscriminately. There are just so many people whose application that's stuck in the backlog, and these are for outbound spousal sponsorship applications. So could the officials please confirm that indeed that the IRCC is processing these applications within its 12-month standard processing period?
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente, pour le...
Thank you very much.
So as the minister mentioned, the 12 months apply for people that are submitting an application like in February 2022. They will be processed in 12 months. However, we do have to work on the backlog or in the inventory that we have, and that's what we are doing. Particulièrement en janvier, nous avons traité.
In January, we processed more than 8,000 applications related to family class alone.
So that's misleading, actually, to say that you'll be at the 12-month processing time starting February 2022. So that means all the applications and all the people who's been stuck in the backlog, they are not going to see the light of day with their processing. So frankly, I actually find that statement from the minister misleading. I'm sorry. So getting the data would be very useful to find out exactly how many people are stuck in the backlog and the projected time when the application would actually be processed. What we learned from committee witnesses the other day is that Canada is not meeting its Francophone outside of Quebec standards, the 4.4% standard. So is there any plan from IRCC to address this growing crisis that's been happening year after year after year?
Thank you very much, Madam President, for the question.
Sorry for interrupting, Ms. Campbell. Time is up for Ms. Kwan. So maybe when we come back to her, you can answer that question. We will now proceed to our second round, and we will start that with Ms. Falk. Ms. Falk, you will have 5 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the officials for being here today. We heard the minister in his opening remarks. He said backlogs will be reduced. That is what he said. So I'm actually very concerned with what MP Kwan had just brought up. What I had heard you as the officials say is that applicants as of this month, February 2022, will have the service standard of 12 months. So what is happening to all of the backlogs previous to this? What is the time frame to clean these backlogs up?
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. So,
thank you.
Clarifier, depuis janvier, pour les demandes d'application.
Since January, for the family class applications, the processing time will be 12 months. Earlier, what I mentioned about February
will be processed within 12 months, mais on a ce standard-là depuis.
But that standard has been there since January, that people who apply will have a 12-month turnaround time. So with respect to processing times, it depends. If I take family class, for example, in Canada, applications, well, we have 35,000 applications being processed in Canada. And in January, just for the month of January alone, we processed 8,000 family class applications. That includes those in Canada and internationally. So my team and my officials are working like mad to try to do that.
Sir, for the backlog before, I'm going to make the assumption that when you say January, you're saying January 2022, which was just last month. So what about all the backlogs previous to that? What direction has the minister given the department to clean up these backlogs that I'm hearing the excuse of the delayed processing times is because of COVID? What action, what direction's been given by the minister to the department?
Madame la
Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
The department is really working towards reducing the inventory. So for the people that are in our inventory for the last 2 years, 1 year, or a bit more than 2 years, we are processing them as quickly as we can. And as I said, in January alone, we did over 8,000 final decision on the family class line of business. If you compare this to 2020, it was around 6,000 per month in January 2020, which is right before the pandemic. So we are actually reducing and processing more applications per month than we were before COVID.
Okay, how is that being achieved, and what are the metrics being used? I'm hearing from the minister that There's, for example, offices that are still closed. People are working virtual. I represent a rural riding. I know a lot of new Canadians necessarily don't have access to internet and that type of thing. So how is this being achieved? I'm hearing numbers like this is being processed, this is being achieved, but I'm not hearing how we are meeting that. Is it through new hires? What is this 85 million being used for? How is it increasing efficiencies? How is it being achieved?
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Donc, il y a plusieurs facteurs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are several things here. First of all, the pandemic. We have been digitizing files. Those who submitted their files on paper, we have been able to digitize them, and that allows us to process them electronically. And we have our footprint, therefore, internationally, and that will allow Canada to proceed with the processing of these virtual applications. Secondly, as the minister mentioned earlier, there is a system which allows our clients to submit their applications electronically. It's a project pilot right now for this line of business, but we're going to convert this in the spring of 22 to a variety of business lines, and so people will be able to use it. That will allow it to be used throughout Canada and globally.
Is up. We will have to proceed to the next member. Ms. Lalonde, you will have 5 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed.
Merci beaucoup et merci à nos témoins.
Thank you, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. I have a specific question on citizenship. It's a question that comes to me from my community here in Orleans.
A lot about the backlog or the delay in processing the application of citizenship dating from 2020. And I wanted to hear from you about what's being done to address this particular situation, please.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for the question. With respect to citizenship and the wait times, I'm able to happily tell the committee that we've made a lot of improvement over the past 12 to 18 months, further to during the pandemic. The citizenship business line is one that was only on paper originally. And now, through tests and the citizenship swearing in, oath-taking was in person. All of this with the pandemic situation gave us the possibility of having virtual citizenship ceremonies. People no longer need to travel, and we are utilizing technology which will allow us to use programs like ID verification. So we've been able to make progress in this area. More than 133,000 people have become Canadian citizens through these virtual citizenship ceremonies. We tested this online for the knowledge of Canada, and the test is now done electronically. Our clients are invited to fill out the test online, and consequently, they get their results online, electronically. In November 2020, that was started, and we've now seen a year with this program. More than many thousands, rather, of people have been able to fill out the test since COVID, if you compare it to the situation that existed before COVID. So this is a gain. Third change that we did in terms of the citizenship business line. People can now submit their application online. We no longer require paper in terms of the overall management of cases. With COVID, if there are any type of disturbances in certain cities abroad due to COVID, well, people can work from home, and there were some benefits. They can do that electronically now. Thank you very much for this exhaustive, detailed answer.
We've also seen an increase in application in certain stream. I wanted to hear from you about the change that have been made during this pandemic to achieve higher processing time.
Madam Chair, I'll make a few introductory comments and then turn to my colleague Danielle Mills. There were a number of adjustments that we made through COVID. We did a number of facilitations, actually, that are important on the policy side to enable people to extend their stays, for international students to come. And that allowed temporary foreign workers and international students to come through the pandemic. It did also affect, in some ways, the business as well, because we were fueling a huge demand at the same time managing other pressures in the system. My colleague, Danielle Mills, led his team to really transform the way that we were undertaking processing. But one other piece of context that might be important to note is that those facilitation measures that the department undertook also meant that we had to touch applications multiple times. And so that too has created an additional workload burden. But maybe I'll turn to Mr. Mills to give some of the highlights of the
sorry
strategy.
Sorry for interrupting. Time is up. We will now proceed to Mr. Brunel Desaep for 2.5 minutes. Mr. Brunel Desaep, you have 2.5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Do you know how much time that it takes now to get permanent residency in Quebec? How long? Thank you, Madam Chair. To answer the member, it depends on the category. To achieve permanent residency, if it's economic class, family class, it depends. On average, I hear it's 28 months. That's quite long in terms of the rest of Canada. Now, there's been radio silence from your department whenever questions are asked. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd say that I'm a little surprised by the member's question because nonetheless, last year, we allowed more than 50,000 permanent residencies in Quebec, which was very close to the level of the rate of immigration in Quebec. So we have this, the reference levels in Quebec are set by Quebec, and Canada just delivers. We just deliver the permits. So then how can it be? Is it possible to have this 2020 figures? There were 12,000 files that were missing. How is it possible? Madam Chair, I can't confirm the 12,000 number. I don't know where it comes from, but we admitted 50,000 permanent residents in Quebec, and the rate set by Quebec was 53,000 approximately. So really there was only a gap of about 1,500 applications. I can't confirm, but I would be very happy to get back to the member on this. Yes, we don't have the same figures at all, because for 2020, it seems to me we were under by 12,000. I don't want to mislead people. If you have time to answer my last question, people.
Mr. Brunel Desailly, your time is up. We'll come back to you after that. Now we will proceed to Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you will have 2.5 minutes. You can please proceed.
Thank you. Just to follow up on the last question I was asking, I wonder if officials can table their response to the committee for me and for the committee to receive that information by the end of the month. I'd like to ask another question of the officials. The COVID-19 pandemic has made it loud and clear just how much Canada relies on TFWs to keep our economy moving. The pandemic put an even bigger spotlight on the contributions of TFWs and the treatment they received while they were here. I'm dismayed at the Auditor General's report that found the department assessed almost all employers as compliant with COVID-19 regulations, despite, quote, having gathered little or no evidence to demonstrate this. I'd like the officials to advise, how is this even possible and what is being done to address this shameful situation?
Madam Chair, I'd first like to acknowledge the request for a written response. It was with respect to Francophone immigration and the target, and so we have noted that. With respect to temporary foreign workers, indeed, temporary foreign workers coming to Canada over the course of the pandemic underlined the importance. The department is very mindful of some of the vulnerable situations, and that is one of the reasons why the access to the open work permit has become so important. With respect to the specific question, that is actually under Minister Qualtroux's purview to do the enforcement and oversight of the temporary foreign worker regulations. And so that question would be best placed to Minister Qualtrough and her officials.
All right, temporary residents, the TR2PR program pathway system, there are individuals who's being rejected on the basis of a departmental error. A group of 60 individuals, despite applying through the English stream, were rejected based on the French language requirements. So I understand that errors occur. What is being done to address this situation for those people who's been impacted?
You're on mute.
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. With respect to the specific situation,
sorry for interrupting. Time is up, Ms. Campbell, for Ms. Kwan. We will now proceed to Mr. Reddycop. Mr. Reddycop, you will have 5 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Mills, I want to talk about specifics in terms of wait times. I asked the Minister about Madam Carr in my riding, who's received her permanent residency but is at 66 days overdue and counting for her card. This is a common problem. And when can we expect PR cards to be on time?
Merci beaucoup, Madame Chair. Désolé, j'avais...
I apologize. I had some difficulty here with my computer. Just to answer the member, for permanent PR cards, we are doing colossal work to try to reduce the delays, and we will continue to do so over coming months. As has been mentioned, this is a firm commitment that we have made to reduce the time involved. When we come back to our processing time of a certain number of days, I can't say, but our goal is to come back to normal before the end of the year. We are working extremely hard to deal with this issue.
The answer is you will get down to a certain number of days which you can't define in a certain number of months which you're not sure of. So that's not terribly helpful. But following following Ms. Kwan and her request, I have one as well on behalf of the committee, and that is, and you can provide this afterwards, starting in 2015-16, because we're having trouble getting answers forward-looking, so I'm going to look backwards, which should be much easier for you. So starting in 2015-16, please provide the committee with the breakdown by fiscal year for the number of permanent residency cards that were delivered late, the average time they were delivered late, the reasons why they were delivered late, and what steps the department is taking to meet its expected delivery times. And I'll give you till March the 10th to provide that information to the committee. That would be appreciated. But I want to switch gears to talk about compassion, and specifically the lack of compassion that we've seen. All of us have seen, all of my colleagues and myself have seen that when dealing with people. Mechanical, inhuman, emotionless, insensitive, callous, unwilling to listen. These are the words that I hear as an MP when people tell me about their loved ones who can't enter Canada because of immigration cases. And many decisions are based on simple paperwork errors or things that were forgotten. And there's a ruthless application of the rules, denials. How do you ensure that there is some level of compassion in your department? Is there any sensitivity training that you do, that you put your officials through, Mr. Mills?
Madam Chair, thank you very much for that question. I will turn to Daniel Mills to further respond about some of the specifics in the operation category, but would like to note that everyone in the department is very, very motivated to support Canadians as well as support our clients overseas and here in Canada. The team here is actually very passionate, professional, and very committed. We do undertake training for bias as well as cultural sensitivity. And we have recently expedited work on anti-racism and discrimination, as well as we are very committed to our gender-based analysis and accessibility provisions. Mr. Mills, anything you'd like to add with? Sorry.
You mentioned racism, and so I would like to speak about that too, because we've heard testimony throughout the past several weeks about the racism that seems to be built into the culture of IRCC through policies and practices. For example, the failure rate in the student direct stream from Francophone countries like Senegal and Morocco are, in the high 80 to 90% compared to English-speaking SDS applicants from Asia are much lower. And another example was the discriminatory monetary amounts that Nigerian students have to put up, $30,000 compared to other countries. So what have you done as a senior manager, given that this committee has heard testimony about racial profiling prevalent in your department? What have you done as a senior manager to weed out this behavior? Is there an action plan? Are there timelines?
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's a very complex and overreaching question, and one that we welcome. We're very proud of the work that we have underway to address discrimination and bias. Systemic racism, as is noted, is rooted in history and is very complex to look at. We are moving forward with developing
Is there a plan,
a lens. I'm sorry, the screen is buffering on me. Madam Chair, can you hear me? I'm sorry, my
Yeah, we can hear you. Time is up, but I will allow Ms. Redekop to just, maybe we can go 30 seconds back if you didn't hear the question.
And I'm specifically asking about the plan. What is the plan? I understand that it's there. What's the plan to get rid of it?
The plan has multi-prongs, Madam Chair. We are looking at policy, at service, at our staffing. We are developing a equity lens to assess our programs and policies. We are pursuing
For interrupting, time is up.
On representation.
Thank you. Time is up. We will now proceed to Mr. Dhaliwal. Mr. Dhaliwal, you will have 5 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And first of all, I would like to thank both the senior assistant deputy ministers for appearing. And I would also love to thank the IRCC and MED call centers, because being the busiest office, the way they have served us for the last over 6 years, it's tremendously, appreciable. So the question I'm going to carry on is, Madam Kwan asked a very important question about either the applicants ticked that French by mistake or it was departmental mistake. How is going to department fix that French and English dilemma that happened?
Madam Chair, thank you very much for the question. I'd first like to note our our commitment to Francophone immigration strategy to reach the target 4.4% by 2023, we've undertaken a number of measures to increase Francophone immigration coming forward. For example, changes in express entry, where we have increased the points for Francophone applicants, those that are bilingual or French speaking. And we do think we're going to see some progress there. There are other measures underway, for example, with international students and recruiting students. We work very closely with Global Affairs on destination mobility francophone to support and enable Francophone students to apply. I hope that's helpful, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I don't think the Assistant Deputy Minister got the question from either Madam Kwan or myself. The question that we raised is either by mistake or error of the department, the people that applied from TR to PR, they instead of the English team, they applied under the French team, and there are only a bunch of those applications. How the department is going to fix that? That is my question, and I'm sure that was Madam Kwan's intention as well.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I thought I was responding to the other question that had been raised. With respect to the case that has just been raised, the 60 students, that's something that I will look into with my colleagues unless Minister Mills has more information with that. But we will certainly be looking into that.
Thank you kindly. Madam Chair, I'm going to talk about Delhi office. When I hear everything in India is open, but when I hear from the department, all they say is, oh, well, we have only 2 immigration officers there. The embassy is closed. I'm hearing all those things. I would like to see at what capacity the Delhi office is running right now.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente, pour la question.
Thank you very much for the question. For Delhi, I don't have the exact figures, but all the people that are affected in Delhi can work either at the mission itself or remotely. The only reason why there is still an impact because of COVID is
depending on where they are in the country, they may not be able to come to the office, and for the obvious reason, they cannot also work from home. So we have limited capacity on that front, but rest assured that all the other members, all the other employees are doing their best and working from home where possible, and we have also redirected some workload from India to other parts of the world in order to help in our integrated network.
And Madam Chair, I earlier asked the question to the minister, and some of the ethnic cooking, when it comes to the ethnic cooks are not available here in Canada. And I have seen many restaurants and in fact the association looking for cooks, and they have applied those applications almost 2 years ago, and they have not heard from the department. How can they manage spending millions of dollars on their outfits and not opening those restaurants?
Madame la Présidente, merci beaucoup pour la question.
Thank you for the question. Of course, temporary workers is a cohort that the department is actively working on. In 2021, we dealt with more than 600,000 applications for temporary workers. So really, it's
Mr. Mills, time is up. Now, this completes our second round of questioning. Because of the delay in voting, we have these services available and we can go up to 1:10. So we can have a third round with 4 minutes with Mr. Hallan and Mr. Ali and 2 minutes with Mr. Brunel Desaep and Ms. Kwan. So we will now proceed to Mr. Hallan. Mr. Hallan, you will have 4 minutes for your round of questioning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to the officials for being here. My question is based on the racism report. Was anyone fired after that report came out?
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the question. To my knowledge, no, but one thing I would note is when we set up processes for complaints often do increase, and that starts to form the baseline for us to take action.
And this anti-racism report, will it be made public?
Madam Chair, I believe the report is on the Library and Archives website.
No, I mean you said there was a task force set up. Will findings in that report, will that be made public?
We have lots of information that we're looking at, and we'd be pleased to share our efforts, Madam Chair.
Can we please have that tabled to this committee so that we know what's going on with that report? Because it was a very concerning report, and then we hear the same type of racism being carried over into the Chinook program. I have a question that, you had mentioned, one of the officials had mentioned that there's training going on for cultural sensitivity. Is that also put into the algorithms that are obviously, some people would say have those racism built inside of them?
Madam Chair, thank you very much for the question. We may need a little bit more precision about the reports. We're certainly pleased to make information available about our anti-racism task force and our efforts underway. With respect to the question about algorithms, I'm pleased to note that IRCC was one of the first departments, along with Treasury Board Secretariat, to develop a policy for advanced analytics. We have developed a playbook, and in that playbook, we have a number of areas that we look at, including privacy, as well as gender-based analysis and bias. We are very aware of
with all due respect, we're hearing a completely different testimony from the witnesses that have appeared at this committee that are saying that there are obvious racisms that are being, targeted towards those Francophone people who are applying from Africa. And it seems like those algorithms that are built in are obviously discriminating against them. So what kind of, what layers of, oversight is there for that Chinook program? Because every one of the witnesses is calling for it to be paused.
Sorry, Madam Chair, with respect to that question, I'm sorry, is member still speaking? My screen is corrupted.
Madame Chair, je peux peut-être prendre la question. Pour ce qui est de...
I could take the question, Madam Chair. As far as Chinook is concerned, as was mentioned before, the Chinook is a tool that doesn't use analytics. It doesn't make any decisions. It's a system that only transposes information in the system to have all the information consolidated on a single page where we can use it rather than having it on multiple screens. So Chinook is not a decision-making tool. It does not use analytics.
So then, was any consulting done? Because all the witnesses had the same complaint that no consulting was done before the Chinook program was introduced.
Sorry for interrupting. Time is up, Mr. Hallen. We will now proceed to MP Ali. Mr. Ali, you have 4 minutes for your round of questioning. You can please proceed.
Madam Chair, I'm taking his time.
Okay. Mr. Dhaliwal, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I asked this question in the last Parliament, and I'm going to ask the officials again. In 2020, there were PGP, parents and grandparents application, that expression of interest was taken. Out of that, 10,000 applications were processed in 2020 and 30,000 in 2021. Could the official tell me how many more applications are left in that stream, when the people express the interest, so I can see how long would it take to fill in that gap?
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. On a des problèmes.
We have some problems now. The quality of the question wasn't very clear for me. We're having some IT problems, but I think the question dealt with parents and grandparents applications. As you know, in the fall of 2021, we launched an invitation. We gave out an invitation in the fall of 2021, and the department has received applications since that time, and we are in the process of looking at them. But I know that there was already an inventory of parents and grandparents that existed before this new call was made.
Madam Chair, could the Senior Assistant Deputy Minister can table the number of people that expressed interest and are already taken care, and how many they're waiting in the queue out of that expression of interest that they had it in fall. My next question is Madam Chair, I noticed that the new numbers that came up 431,645 that is going to be taken this year. When I look at the numbers from last year, particularly on the family class, usually the number of immigrants that come under the family class is around 25%. And there was a shortfall last year that there were only 20% that were welcomed under the family class. How is this gap going to be filled when we only invited 24% this year?
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This question is two-pronged.
You know, last year it is true that the number of people that have arrived in Canada was lower than our projection, but one thing that we have to take into consideration is the fact of the COVID and travel restriction, and not just in Canada but also around the world. So in our landing inventory, or in our inventory of people that were allowed to travel but they decided not to, you know, we had a lot of people. So at one point, you know, like the department is trying to link le nombre de décisions qu'on fait et transpose.
The number of decisions that are made and transpose them. But in doing that, if the people decide to take more time to travel before reaching Canada to live, well, that affects the percentage overall for the year. So we do follow up rigorously, and we know that for 2022 we will be able to reach the rate that was proposed.
Interrupting, time is up. We will now proceed to Mr. Brunel Desaep for 2 minutes. Mr. Brunel Desaep, you will have 2 minutes, so you can please begin.
Merci. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think I have to be really transparent here. This is a reproach that many witnesses have made. It's the lack of clarity that the department is demonstrating. It seems to me that the figures for Quebec are different, 43,000 and some for Quebec, but the government is talking about 25,000 files for Quebec. We have 14,000 additional immigrants that were admitted in Quebec. So tell me then that I don't have the good figures. Maybe we have two different sets of figures. But what can you say about the 2020 figures that you have? Thank you very much, Chair. I have to apologize to the member. Earlier, I was talking about the 2021 figures and not the 2020 figures. Okay, at least we agree on that. That explains the situation then. Can you explain the situation that Quebec got 43,000 and some people for the 25,000 files? Well, you have to take into consideration we did not achieve the immigration targets for 2020. That is something that is correct for Quebec and for Canada overall. It's true. But it's exactly what we were talking about earlier. COVID prevented a great deal of travel at the beginning of 2020. It was the beginning of the pandemic in March, April 2020. Operations, both international and domestic here in Canada, were really affected by the pandemic, and many people many offices were not equipped to work remotely. So that had an effect on our employees. Yes, but they should.
Interrupting Mr. Brunel Desab. Time is up. Mr. Mills' time is up. We will now proceed to Ms. Kwan. We will end this panel with 2 minutes from Ms. Kwan. Ms. Kwan, you have 2 minutes for your round of questioning.
IRCC is keeping any public policies related to special immigration measures being taken for Afghan refugees private. Advocates in the sectors, of course, say that this is a critical time for them to have this information. Otherwise, how would they know what is being applied and under what circumstances would those who are in grave danger know about these different immigration measures? So my question to the officials is the minister still exercising his authority to bring in special procedures secretly?
Madam Chair, thank you very much for the question. As I think the Minister outlined, there are special immigration measures being taken in the dynamic environment that we find ourselves, and as well as outlined the commitment and that he is advancing to bring 40,000 Afghans safely to Canada.
But I'm being very specific. I'm not talking about the general immigration measures. There's some specific actions that the ministry is taking that is not made public. So people do not know what those specific actions might be, or what it would look like, or who it would apply. Is that still being done by the ministry right now?
Madam Chair, thank you for the question. We'll take the feedback that we've been given and note that and relay that to the minister. Thank you.
I would like to actually get a response then from the minister or from the department with respect to that. This is a critical issue, and the public needs to know, advocates need to know, families need to know, so that they can be aware what special measures, under what special circumstances would that apply. And I'm not talking about the 40,000 refugee resettlement measure. I'm talking about other measures to which the minister is making decisions around public policy that's not made available.
Sorry for interrupting. Ms. Kwan, your time is up. With that, our panel comes to an end. I would really like to thank Mr. Mills and Ms. Campbell for appearing before the committee today and all the work which you are doing in these challenging times on behalf of all Canadians. Before we adjourn, I would like to give a reminder to all the members of the committee that the prioritized witness list for the study on differential outcomes are to be sent to the clerk by Friday, 4 p.m. So please make sure that the lists are submitted to the clerk. And also, the draft calendar has been circulated to all the members. And you will see in the draft calendar that the minister has confirmed that he and his officials will be available to appear on this important study on March 24th. So is it okay with all the members that we schedule a meeting with the minister and the officials on the study of differential outcomes for March 24th? Okay. So with that, thanks once again. Thanks to all the members for cooperating and keeping in mind the time constraints. And thank you once again to our officials. The meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.